Jason, what's up, buddy? How you doing today?
Hey, good, good.
All right, super excited to have you again. We're on episode 6 of today's webcast, and it's called "Consistency is Currency." Super excited for this last. I can't believe it's been 6 already. 6 episodes, 12 weeks, unbelievable. We started out episode 1. It starts with hello. It was all about mastering the first impressions. Second episode was transaction to trust. That episode, we talked a lot about being curious and asking questions to really uncover needs. Episode 3 was telling the story, my favorite, and I believe one of the most important episodes that we had because it's all about the financial professionals and sharing their values to the financial uh, professionals inside the bank, right? And I think that's where I like to say the financial professional is selling their vision.
Mm.
You cannot have success if you're not selling the vision to all your teammates. Episode 4, language of listening. That's where we really broke down and understanding the core principles of active listening and reading those cues. Episode 5 was last episode, power of partnership. It really talks about that one team mindset and how to get everybody on the same page. And then today, like I mentioned, consistency is currency. We're going to understand. We're going to talk about a little bit understanding the impact of really small, repeatable actions. We want to identify some small daily habits that you could take away today and measure and maintain your momentum. And then last, we want to really talk about, how do you embed culture through consistency? Those things are going to be really the topics of our conversation over the next 30 minutes or so. So again, Jason, welcome, and I cannot believe it's our 6th episode and final episode in this series, Frontline Referrals.
Yeah, it flew by, and I was just thinking about, it's the final one in the series, and I was like, okay, how do we keep the podcast going? Because there's just a unlimited amount of topics we could dive into when it comes to the referral culture and the communication culture within each branch. And so I'm excited to see, what will come of this, and then what will come of what we come up with next.
What was the great thing about this series is we started out and we really just we're trying to figure things out. But each one's gotten better and better, in my opinion, and I think the views have showed that. So last week was by far our greatest viewership. So we want to thank everyone for joining us and listening. And we're hoping that we beat that this week with today's episode, which is so important in today's culture. Is how do you stay top of mind when you're competing with the media and social media on a 24/7? If you're a financial professional inside the banks and inside financial centers, I talk about this a lot. Your biggest competitor is this news cycle, 24 hours news cycle. So like how many times do you, I mean, I always ask, I'll say, how many times do you think you see your client face to face or just have conversations with over the course of the year? Lots of times it's 4, 3, maybe 6 at the most, but it's very few, maybe an
Oh yeah.
annual visit. So we get about an hour to 5 hours over the course of a year to sit down with our clients. And meantime, they get exposed to social media and the news 24/7. So we're really competing with that. It makes today's topic so much more relevant when you think about it in those terms. How do you stay in front of your client consistently so that you're constantly in top of mind and the perception is that you have an ongoing relationship with them, and they really they really trust in your advice as you get as time goes on.
Yeah, it's huge. And you bring up like so many great landmines that we could stay away from, but I'd love to jump into a couple of them. Just because, being with advisors the last couple of weeks, we've had some of these conversations, and I've had the conversation all the way from one end of the financial professional who said, "Yeah, I mean, I send out, an email or two a year, and I'll do the review meeting if they want it, but that's about it." all the way to the other end of, the leader who has a strategic communication plan that's planned out by quarter, by month, and then, which touch their their clients are going to be able to get. So, you think about, across the board that way, and then, as the financial center sharing the client, right? Because if they have a checking or savings, if they're doing something with, mortgage, if they're doing something with, the advisor, I mean, it's a lot across the board. And there's so many competing voices that, want to take them away from you. Why don't we have some type of consistent communication? It just boggles my mind. Boggles my mind.
Yeah, and you want to take in consideration too. A lot of the organization firms that we work with, they will send out stuff
Sure.
to their clients for the financial professional, whether it's through social media, pre-approved content, whether it's through mailers. I'm sure in today's day and age, there's a lot of that built in. The difference is what we're talking about is more personal contact.
Yep.
You want to be able to build your brand, and you want to be able to tell your story in your terms to your clients. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway, is as we look at ourselves as financial professionals, you really have to build that brand. Do you want the brand determined by other people's opinions, or do you want to shape those opinions before they even get in front of you for that annual review by you consistently being in front of them in a compliant way?
And to do that not only with the clients, but then your internal frontline team. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
just something that you just can't ever allow yourself to go, well, you know, it's just not the priority this week or this month. No, it is.
Yeah.
Communication is always the priority, and I mean, I sat in a training yesterday, so I got to sit in, kind of a couple sessions after I was done, and yeah, there's a lot going on. They're going through the reports and how we doing this, and there's all those things that just pile up, and they put up a fascinating stat of where the time the financial professional is going, whether it's reports, whether it's this. And I was thinking about, I mean, the best time really should be making sure I'm building that relationship with the clients and with my frontline team. So, you talk about planning your week and making sure you're getting everything scheduled, getting the biggest rocks done first. That's the biggest rocks, at the beginning of the week, making sure I'm communicating consistently with my frontline team and with my clients. Boom. After that, then make sure all those other stuff is happening, because it's so incredibly important.
One of the things that I do, Jason, in order to create content is I'm just constantly aware of what's going on around me, and I'm looking for ways that relates to what we're doing and how we're communicating. And so for those who have trouble creating content, the content's right in front of you. It's the way you interact with your clients. It's the way you interact with your peers. It's the stories that are going to come based on your action steps. And that's the easiest way to start creating content. And the more you do that, the easier it gets. You'll start recognizing things and say, wow, you know what? I have an idea around that concept, or that would make a great photo, or like those are the things that kind of really help your creative juices go. That's really important, to reach out and to your peers and to your clients, to really get those habits into place. So, talking about habits, right? So some of the things that we talked about this week was understanding the impact of small, repeatable actions. So I think that's really important. And we talk about periodic campaigns and how to come up with some of those things. Jason, what do you think is in terms of what we talked about yesterday is a good place to start around repeatable actions?
Yeah, I think it's, making sure, I mean, it's so good to have just a simple checklist, the repeatable actions. One, uh, am I utilizing the opportunities I get with the huddles as much as I possibly can? I talked to an advisor not too long ago, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. We've all been there, but they're like, Yeah, I just don't have the time. I know it probably only takes 5 to 10 minutes to prepare something, maybe not even that. But then, to prepare something and then, to say something for a few minutes in the huddle, I just don't have the time. And I was like, no, you have to. You have to. You have to have the time because that's where you get to communicate, cast vision, talk to the team at large. Now, you can do those things separately, but it's a great opportunity. And just what you talked about, so many leaders talk to us all the time about, well, I don't have any stories. I don't have any this. I don't have any that. You just got to start flexing that muscle. I mean, that's it. Like yesterday, I'm at a credit union headquarters. I'm in the lobby. I'm waiting, to get my go ahead so I can go into the room, strike up a conversation with the receptionist. And for 30 minutes, I could have sat there silently by myself, but I don't know. I was like, okay, here's an great opportunity, and so I was able to use just that moment of connection inside of the training that I did because we were talking about how to ask better questions, how to be a story catcher, how to remember things, and so I just started telling the entire room who all walked past the receptionist all about the receptionist's life, their two kids. I mean the whole thing, just
Wow.
to model this is the this is the power we have in these daily habits. And so if I'm utilizing those daily habits every single day, the muscle's going to develop. And so, instead of saying, well, I don't have time for the huddle or I don't have anything to share, okay, it's on the checklist. I'm going to spend 5 minutes getting something ready. And so, maybe there's a few different opportunities that you can use to rotate. You're going to brag about a teller. You're going to tell a story about a banker. You're going to, talk about just the synergy you see inside of the financial center. You could just rotate those incredible stories. And now you're bringing hope, you're bringing life. So first on my checklist, you got to absolutely use the power of the huddle. Anything you'd add for the huddle?
Absolutely. So again, I will go back to that to episode 3. You got to be curious, right? You got to be curious, and I think that's probably look. That's something I need to work on, right? You got to be more curious. Authentically curious about people to find out their stories. Most people like talking about themselves. Inside the huddle is probably the most important part of the day, where you really got to set the tone, and that's where you're going to build the best relationships. Those
Yep.
one-on-one conversations before but actually, in all honesty, if I could think about it, I'm thinking probably the first 5 minutes before the huddle,
Oh,
because I've been in huddles, right? And people start gathering for the huddle, and there's always 2, 3 people before the other 2, 3 people, and
yep.
you're waiting around. In those moments are where you really connect with those other people. As a third party coming in to deliver, those huddles or a little bit of training here and there, that's where we really connect. That I set the whole tone of that next 10, 15 minutes in the first 3 minutes before I even start going to that professional setting. I
Yep.
think those are the most important minutes where you're just kind of talking everyone's guards down, and they're just like, who's this guy? And the next thing you know, you're asking them questions, they're talking, you're making them laugh. And then guess what? Those 10 minutes are so much easier to get your message across because
Yeah.
you already built rapport and trust with those individuals. It's
Yeah.
my favorite part.
And that's gold. And the next time you come in, you remember, pieces of their story. And you're like, Mary, tell me about the Alaskan vacation you went on.
Yeah.
Boom. I mean, deep levels of trust that are just powerful. And we all get into ruts where we're just like, I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. Understand all of that. But if you want to make the biggest impact, if you want to see your best foot forward, these are the things you got to continue to do because
And
you'll just
if
see.
you're not natural at it, if look, not everyone's a natural
Right.
a personality. So if you're not a natural at it, you got to practice, and you have to get into a positive mindset. And look, it's a lot easier if you generally care about other people and want to see them succeed. If that's your disposition, you're going to have a very easy transition on becoming, curious about people and talking about them. You're probably doing it already. You just got to be more aware of the questions you're asking to develop that skill.
Yep.
If you're not, then you got to kind of self-reflect and say, okay, how do I want to know someone better? How do I connect? I think that's probably the foundation of
Yep.
everything we're talking about, is wanting to help those around you and sell your vision to them, and to generally want to see them succeed.
Oh, okay. Pardon me here for a minute, but hey, this is the podcast, so we can get a little crazy.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
we just go on a rabbit trail for a second, and we'll come back, get some of these other habits. But my eyes have been open recently. I had a phone call today with an advisor, talked to 4 advisors yesterday, and then last week you and I were in a breakout room and we asked 40 advisors, how many of you use AI or ChatGPT? And
Gold.
very, very little hands. Now, we get all the legal and
I'll
compliance.
tell
We
it,
get,
one person.
yeah, one.
Right.
And we
Out
get
of like 40.
legal and compliance, and we understand that, a lot of firms now have their own version of it and it's not as effective. But those of you who are like, I don't have time for the huddles, uh, or I don't know, have time to prep, or I don't know what to say, open up, download the ChatGPT app on your phone and go into it and say, I'm a financial professional. Uh, I want you to act as an expert financial professional who has led many huddles with the frontline team of a financial center, tellers, licensed bankers, branch managers. Give it as much as you can and say, I've got 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to share, what is the absolute, and give it the prompts to share. All of a sudden, you will have ideas upon ideas. You could say, give me a client communication tip, give me a great quote that will motivate the team, and give me the best question I could ask, as a group. Boom. Like now I mean, that took less than 2 minutes.
You could put their demographics.
Yep.
You could put anything you want down there, and that is a great, great, idea, right, to share with everyone. And that's the simplest way to be able just to generate those quick little huddles. I mean, it's really easy. I mean, you could take one of our program guides that we give out, worksheets, drop that in the chat GBT and say, hey, give me 3 questions to ask from this worksheet. Like, there's a ton of information out there that you can do that with. And I have a feeling that we'll be seeing the Dan and Jason prompts for financial professionals
That's a great
for
idea.
huddle.
I was
Oh
just
yeah,
thinking, okay, maybe the next part of the series is, how to use AI uh,
I love it, man.
to
That's
grow
a
your
great.
your
That's a
client
great.
base, all that kind of stuff. Just because, it, it's like it must have been for financial professionals, leaders in the 80s when all of a sudden, you know, uh, we're seeing, a cell phone come onto the scene in the late 80s or whatever, in the
Fax
90s, all
machines.
of a sudden
Woo!
they're like, what is this AOL thing? You
Yeah.
know, and a good amount of people are like, oh, I don't need that technology. Don't miss out. Don't miss out on it. Be ahead of the curve. Utilize it, become the expert in your place.
I'll put some perspective. I'm in a room with a lot of my peers this week, and they had IT come in, and marketing, and the IT group. They came in and talked to us about some of the things we can do with ChatGPT, which we haven't rolled out to the whole team, but there's probably 2 or 3 of us on in our group that have access to it. I happen to be one of those individuals testing it out, and I use it all the time. But it was just amazing to me that some people in that room, the majority of those people in the room, had no idea how to use the ChatGPT for the purposes of creating emails, doing sales ideas, all those things.
Yep.
So
Yep.
to your point, where
Absolutely.
we sat in a room full of financial professionals and only one person is using it, you need to really, because look, you got to be careful around compliance, but you don't have to sell product. Like, you don't have to go product. Like, for me, it's all about how do you communicate. And I use those prompts to come up with ideas, and then my ideas, and then shape them, and then how we get. So I as a financial professional, you can look on ways to say, hey, I have a client coming in. What are the top 10 most common things for this demographic?
Right.
That's simple.
we yesterday, just, one of the advisors brought up, they put all the client information in Salesforce. Great. But where we see kind of a breakdown, Salesforce is great, but you could take that information. Okay, I'm meeting with Bob later. Here's all my meetings from Bob in the past. Cut and copy, put it in ChatGPT, and
You just
say,
hold on, Jason. I just got to jump in here because you've got to be real careful with that, because that's you got to be careful, because if you're not inside your firewall, right? That
"Oh yeah,
information could be become now no longer private, right? So if you don't want to put personal information inside ChatGPT unless you have a secure ChatGPT within your corporation or your firm.
right,
So if you're going to do that, you need to be general without information and without
yeah,
names.
yeah," and
So
that's
your reality, what we're telling them to do is, if you want to use it in that way, use it as a case study.
right, right, and that's kind of sorry, that's where I was kind of going with, hey, I've got this client Bob. He loves the Red Wings.
Yeah, yeah.
We've had these great conversations. You know, help me with a great question to ask him. That kind of idea. Yeah, obviously none of those. Personal things.
We're not
Bob's
there yet.
afraid of cats. No, we're not going to say any of that kind of you know personal stuff. Obviously.
But
But that's good. That's a
you
good
can use it.
clarification because there's so many people who don't understand so much of the power of what it entails. And, I mean, even, yesterday we were talking a little bit in the training about just somewhat of a communication plan throughout the year. And what do you rely on? Do you rely on, okay, some firms send out a quarterly, email. Well, what do you send out? Are you doing anything to personalize it, to make it more of your own? And ChatGPT, again, that could be a tool for you. But in the same way, back inside of the financial center, that could be a quick tool for you to come up with ideas. You don't, you could just say, give me five best questions that I could ask my team this morning as I'm standing around before the huddle. And then you could just try one out, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Baby steps. When I first started using it, I had no idea. And then I started talking to you about how you were using it, and you were like the mastermind. So then I got better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm missing out. I'm missing out. But yeah, it's a great tool. So the road back, the come back to some of the learning objectives of consistency. Right? We want to identify some of the daily habits, I think, that will make um, you know make it a lot easier for you to kind of build that culture that we always talk about inside the branches. And I believe that once you embed consistency inside the financial center, you will grow your referral culture.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And so we talked about, okay, making sure we have a good communication plan inside of huddles, utilize other little habits as well. We talk about this all the time, the walk around. We said in the webcast, which I listened back to it and I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty poignant. But, here's the reality. Some of us are inside of our financial centers, but we're not present. We actually may be there, but we're not present to the team. We're not present. We're kind of off as our own little part. From our perspective, Dan, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but that just can't be. Like you got to be there. Your presence needs to not just be off by yourself, but looking for those opportunities to walk around, to have those conversations, to be fully present with the rest of the team.
Build that one team mindset. I mean,
Yes.
if your team doesn't feel like you're part of the team, guess what? You're not selling that vision. You don't understand how important it is from a people perspective to build and sell the vision, your vision, whatever that may be. But you need to build up everyone around you. You need to lift up those individuals so that they actually want to come to work and help you succeed and help the brand succeed. You know, and from a very high level, if you're able to do that, think about someone really enjoying what they're doing, and coming in and being part of something every day. Well, perhaps if that's the case across your financial centers, less likely you're going to have more turnover. Right? So when we talk about building up, lifting up everyone, helping them improve in their communications, building a culture, we're talking about how do we sustain your team.
Yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing I hear every single day is, oh, I don't want, I can't do the training because, that branch is so far gone, and oh, we just had people leave, and it's so hard for me to do the training because I do the training, and then 3 weeks later I got to do the training again because that's what I would call putting obstacles in front of yourself.
Yep.
If you want to be proactive and really build culture and be a leader on your team, and not only your team and your financial centers, but a leader among your peers, build that atmosphere, and you'll become known for it, and that'll become part of your ethos, and that'll really excel, and more people excel under your leadership, the better the engine's going to run. There's no question about it.
Boy, that's powerful. Boy, that's powerful. Yep, absolutely. And we've talked about, throughout the whole series, some other of the great team relationship building habits, remembering details about people's lives, sponsoring different lunches or parties or, those different kind of opportunities that you can do it. But I think another incredible habit is just to celebrate when s- someone refers, and then tell the story, either a teller or a banker. Sometimes we just sweep it under the rug. We talked about in this series about, me talking with a banker once. That's like, I, I, I just never know if anything ever comes of it. They never follow back up with me. Okay, that's a great reminder. Always follow back up. We didn't get them this time, but
Right.
thank you for the referral. That kind of idea.
So Jason, I'm gonna wrap up here, but before we get going, I do want to say one thing. Right, I love affirmations. I'm a big affirmations guy. I have them up everywhere. I've shared some of them on the podcast here, but I'm going to share one more to kind of wrap this whole series up. Right, um, when you're sitting there in your office and you're engaging, I want you to think. One more question, one more opportunity,
Mm.
one more win. If you're able to ask that extra question, if you're able to uncover that one more opportunity, day in and day out, you're going to uncover more wins. And I think that's so important. Everything that we talked about from episode 1 to episode 6 is super relevant. But the reality is, all that stuff goes away if you're not consistent.
Yes.
Consistency will win the day. So the more you can get consistent at all these different skills that we're providing you, the faster you'll build that culture of referrals. And the more referrals, the better, the more success you're going to have. And I
Yep.
believe, what's the quote we always say, Jason? It starts with referrals, and with the referrals, everything starts from there, right? Or
Right.
begins from there. So excited to have this opportunity to sit down with you again, Jason, and kind of talk through this. Appreciate everyone who's tuning in. I'm excited to tell you that we are going to continue with another series shortly. Jason and I are working on some stuff, and we're going to formulate something into our next venture here on this podcast. So thank you, everyone. Jason, you want to wrap up and say anything?
No, I mean, this is really not the end, right? It's the beginning of a new way of operating. And for a lot of us, you've been doing a lot of these things, just continue elevating the importance of them because culture's not built in a day, it's built daily. And so, this has been awesome. Thank you for sharing it with your team members and looking forward to what's next.
All right. Take care, everyone.